very good afternoon to you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're starting. And now I can say properly a very, very warm welcome to you all for this afternoon. My name is Aidan Walker. It's my pleasure and delight to be chairing this really rather interesting event. I tend to have these ideas, and then when they finally come to a point of putting it into practice, I'm going, oh my God, hope it works. But I've got a fantastic panel, a really, really interesting and powerful panel, who I'll introduce very shortly. The idea, what we're hoping to do is develop, if not exactly a manifesto, because I think that's probably asking a bit much for, an hour's worth of discussion, to come up with some major ideas about what craft means and what it's doing and how it's working in the 21st century. On my far left is Mark Boddington, the founder of Silverlining Furniture. And he and I have had this conversation about, did I see your work when you graduated from Farnham? I think we probably did. I probably published it. I was editing Woodworker magazine at the time, so I go back quite a way. I also have, in my own background, 10 years as a not particularly successful, not financially successful anyway, carpenter and joiner, and indeed cabinet maker I ended up. So I have a particular personal interest and passion for the subject. On my immediate left is Grant Gibson, an old friend and colleague, not old, but a friend and colleague for a long time. Older. Who's editor of Crafts magazine. What better person could you have than that? You could also have Henrietta Thompson on my right. Henrietta is editor at large of Wallpaper. She writes for a vast array of influential and significant magazines. What else have you done? She worked very closely with Silverlining on this wonderful book that you can all see. So Henrietta knows Silverlining intimately, and that's why I'm going to ask her to start. Ladies and gentlemen, Rabi Haj, architect, designer, very well known for his work in hotels, also gallery owner, so we have some strong connections to the world of art. But last, but by no means least, is Janice Blackburn. It's a real delight to welcome Janice to the panel. An enormous reputation as a curator, as a patron of the arts, worked with the Saatchi Gallery, young British artists. What Janice doesn't know about this subject is barely worth knowing, certainly a lot more than I do anyway. So what we said we would do, or what I asked them to do, was come up with a few lines, just a kind of one-liner really, about towards the Manifesto for Craft. What I just wanted to do was propose some questions. Is craft still relevant? Do we still need it? If so, why? Is it exclusively for the rich? Where does sustainability and the eco-agenda come into it? What does it have to do with art? What decides the value of a piece of work? What does it have to do with luxury? What, if any, is the difference between craft and craftsmanship? Do computers help or hinder craftsmanship? Should craft carry meaning in the same way as art? And as you see in the title, Craft and Luxury in the Digital Age, and then the subtitle is a Manifesto for 21st Century Craftsmanship. So we might find that craftsmanship and craft are much the same thing. So after those millions of questions, which I'm sure we won't, not millions, there's about 10, I'm sure we won't get anywhere near to the bottom of all of them, we have R.I.P. Mr. Steve Jobs, who's talking about design here, but I think it's actually craft that he's talking about. Design is the fundamental soul of a human-made creation that ends up expressing itself in successive outer layers of the product or service. When you're a carpenter making a beautiful chest of drawers, you're not going to use a piece of plywood on the back, even though it faces the wall and nobody will ever see it. You'll know it's there, so you're going to use a beautiful piece of wood on the back for you to sleep well at night. The aesthetic, the quality has to be carried all the way through. Some of his language, I think, betrays the fact that he worked in digital communications and not in wood, however. And then, for myself, I would just like to say this about craft: the key is in the mind and heart, not the hands of the maker, though of course you need preternatural skill. If you love your work and perform it with love, you are automatically a craftsperson. That's kind of what I believe. And let's ask Henrietta what she believes.
Okay, hello everybody. So I am first and foremost a writer about design, contemporary design, and I do a little bit of curating as well. But I think this was why Silverlining first came to me originally in order to collaborate on this book. and I've spent some time over the last couple of months, really, working with the company, and I've really had the opportunity to ponder this issue of the future of craftsmanship, or craftsmanship in the 21st century, and what that means. So I guess in terms of my one-liner, I think it's worth saying that the value of craftsmanship, in my opinion, has really increased a lot over the last few years. I think that people are more and more looking for meaning and provenance in their products. They want products that tell a story, and so craftsmanship really implies that time has been invested in something, and where love and care have been involved. I think that really means a lot. It holds a huge appeal for people. So the second thing I wanted to put forward was this idea that I believe quite strongly about, which is that there are some really exciting opportunities for craftsmanship already at the moment in the 21st century, which have to do with collaboration. I think that we're increasingly living in a very networked, sociable society and world, and I think that puts forward, we tend to think of crafts and craftsmanship as being quite a solitary activity, but what I've noticed with Silverlining particularly is this idea of collaborating between different disciplines, and I think that's really exciting. Also, new technology, and what that can add to craftsmanship and craft, because it tends to be seen as something that's quite old-fashioned, these skills that are passed on through generations, and I think where you start to look at what possibilities there are with new technology, then things can get really exciting.
The excitement of technology's contribution to craftsmanship. I would like us to think about that, because there are, it's fairly standard stuff for designers to say, oh, we don't draw anymore, and it's all being done by the computer now, and computers taking away the craft. But clearly, there's much more to it than that. So I like that as a topic. Janice, could I ask you to do your contribution, please?
Well, I think that craftsmanship has become even more important recently. I think we went through the whole technology thing, and I think that people are now beginning to value craftsmanship much more. And I use the word craftsmanship as opposed to craft. And it really struck home when I went to see the Alexander McQueen exhibition at the Met. And it was an absolute celebration of craftsmanship. I mean, you looked at these amazing clothes that combined all the elements of design, but there was everything there. It was art, it was design, it was the most incredible craftsmanship in terms of embroidery, handmade work made by hand. And it really, I kept thinking about this, and it put so many things into context for me, because having worked, in very contemporary art for quite a long time, and then I had a complete change of heart and became pretty obsessed with craft and design, and have personally commissioned many things from people in their very early days who've now gone on to great things, but putting my confidence in those people. And I get huge pleasure from work made by hand. In terms of technology, of course, it all, they work together, and many designers that I work with and really have enormous admiration for, of course they use technology, but they still use their hands. I mean, if you take people like Martino Gamper or Gareth Neal or endless, it's a sort of happy marriage, if you like, and I don't think you have one without the other. But I think that the importance of craftsmanship today is even more important, because especially in times of a recession, we're looking at, value, if you like, and what can be more valuable than things that you put, not just, I sort of balk at the word love a bit, but that you put your everything into, your energy, and that it comes from the soul. And when I go around degree classes or whatever, shows, I see young people who are really doing this. They're not just working with technology, but they're really, you know, whether they're potters or embroiderers, textile makers, furniture makers. I think that, to me, the handmade craftsmanship is on the rise.
Thank you, Janice. Rabbi, do you feel able, willing and ready to...
Yes, it's craftsmanship, we live it every day, and we discover it every day. And for me, craftsmanship is a living knowledge. It's a living and evolving knowledge every day, and in an eternal way. It is something that, which is, you know, one of the rare knowledge or profession or science, if you want to look at it from you know, the technical point of view. It's something that is transmitted only verbally, all across the, you know, the centuries. And I think craftsmanship comes also with master craftsmen and the transmission of knowledge between these master craftsmen and their apprentices. So I think it is something that we also forget about, is that, you know, when we mention craftsmanship, we mention also something that has been made, discovered, built, and then with a lot of errors along the way, and then mastered. And this mastering of the craftsmanship is transmitted, the only way that it's absolutely possible to transmit it properly is verbally. It's by taking someone, talking to a person, spending time with this person. So there's a massive relationship between craftsmanship and time. And so basically you have centuries of knowledge in a piece like this one. It's not because, the craftsman can still be in his 20s and still discovering things, but he is he's inheriting the knowledge of his peers and the knowledge that basically funneled down to him all across the centuries. So basically it is still evolving. We have craftsmanship that is in every one of us, in every profession that we do also, but at the same time, specifically in craft or in making objects. Making objects, building buildings, this takes time to be able to master. And this is what we are looking at today. I think it takes time also to master tools. And if we talk about digital manufacturing today, it's a new tool. We are still in the beginning of understanding it. So I think, you know, craftsmanship is synonymous of time. It's synonymous of also evolution of knowledge, and it will never stop. It will always evolve and change. Another element of craftsmanship that I find very interesting to define, it is something that you want to forget about. It's basically something which is made. You make something with, you know, the best skills possible, but you always try to hide the skills, voluntarily and involuntarily. The best crafts pieces, the best, you know, pieces of design or cabinets that even, you know, today, even if they were made in the 17th century or just 10 years ago, the best ones are the ones that we don't even ask how they are made. The ones that have so much emotion that is induced by looking at the piece that you don't even want to discover the technique. As soon as you ask your question, how is this made, there is something broken already there. There is this purity of craftsmanship, the emotion that is transmitted through craftsmanship that is disappearing because you're already starting to question the object. So craftsmanship is something which has to be completely mastered and omnipresent in a piece, yet it does everything to make the person looking at the piece forget about it. You wouldn't ask how Vermeer made his paintings. Even painters, you know, in the 12th century and 15th century, they were mixing themselves their own paint, and each painter had his own recipe, and his recipe is only transmitted verbally to his the people who are helping him in the studio, and each one has his own knowledge of, you know, mixing colors, building a perspective. As soon as you understand that there is there have been a use of a camera obscura to be able to build a perspective, and it's not built by mathematically or with knowledge of how to build a perspective. Already the idea of the perspective in a painting is broken. So it's a mix of discovery and illusion, and this is what's unique about the craftsmanship of whether it's something which is made 5 centuries ago or just this year.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you, Rabbi. That's there's some provocative stuff there. About not wanting to even know how something is made.
Yes, I mean, as soon as you start thinking about how things are made, it means that there is, maybe at a second stage you look at things and start, try to guess the technique. But if you are at this stage, it means that the emotion that has been projected to you hasn't been 100%. And I believe in this. I believe in the fact that you look at a beautiful impressionist painting or a fantastic Louis Philippe cabinet, and you don't ask yourself how it's made. It's just projects so much beauty in it that you just take it as a whole and not look at the workmanship that is in it. After that, you come into the second layer where you want to guess and try to maybe put some options of how things are made, and then it's the poetry is starts to be broken there.
I think this falls under the heading of relationship between craft and art, doesn't it? Because both you guys have mentioned meaning, people looking for meaning, and I know Alex, Silverlining senior designer, it talks even in the book about finding a new meaning for our pieces. So I would like us to think about that, because I'm not sure whether craft should have meaning. I mean, I'm open to persuasion, if you want to beat me about the head and body until I agree with you. But art sets out, I think, to mean something, to communicate something, doesn't it? Does craft do that same thing? Shall we wait for answering the question before we go to Grant and Mark? Grant, can you either answer the question or...
Well, can I take that on, actually? I mean, physically beat around the head and body, or...
Yeah, physically, if you like, yeah. I'm bigger than you.
I'm faster. I think the answer, the short answer to that is that craft can. It doesn't have to, but it can. And that craft, fundamentally, it seems to me, is a spectrum that runs from fine art to industrial design and all points in between. I mean, I have to confess that...
Is this your one line, by the way? You're just answering.
No, I'm just talking now.
Okay.
Is it one line? Loads of lines up there.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I have to confess that I kind of slightly scratched my head when you asked about this. And I don't want to subvert your...
yeah, you can subvert, Grant, it's fine.
But I think it's worth pointing out at this stage that there have been 2 incredibly important manifestos for the crafts, and the craft is actually kind of at the forefront of adding intellectual gristle to the government at the moment. I mean, one is obviously Richard Sennett, the craftsman, where he talks about craft in its broader sense, so Linux designer as a craftsman, and takes actually your point, or maybe you took his point, I don't know who came up with that, that craft is about doing something for the sake of doing it well, and I think Jobs was talking about that as well. And the second book, which is written by a kind of Republican libertarian in the States, was by Matthew Crawford, which is a case for working with your hands. And this has become, I mean, I don't know, people probably know this book, I know that one person will certainly know this book, but he was essentially a philosophy professor who jacked it all in to become a motor mechanic, and then wrote a text about why becoming a motor mechanic was more satisfying than being a philosophy professor. Both these texts have been used by the Tory party. I think they added Bristol to George Osborne's speech when he talked about the March of the Makers in the spring budget. I've been at several speeches that John Hayes has given, who's the Minister of State for Further Education, Skills and Lifelong Learning, where he called for the creation of a new arts and crafts movement. So I think, just to kind of give this some context, that what we're doing here is lovely, and I think it's a lovely idea, but I think it's worth pointing out that it's actually craft, not design, not architecture, that's providing intellectual political gristle at the moment. Is that enough?
Is that your one-liner?
It's a feeling.
Good, Grant, thank you. And Mark, I think it should be to you to, as a father of the whole thing, I think we should be asking you to at least round off this first part.
Okay. Well, I think craftsmanship is definitely relevant to the 21st century. I think it distinguishes the ordinary from the extraordinary. In a world of consumerism, the word, and abuse of the word luxury, I think craftsmanship is more important than ever. I think it's about realising ideas and creating extraordinary, timeless objects, which history and the test of time will prove that those objects were extraordinary, nothing was Martian. But I think that the real thing of a craftsman or craftsperson is that they take the best materials, the best knowledge, the best skills of the day, and they combine them and they improve them. In reality, I think the craftsman's an innovator, and that's by a sort of inner drive or passion wanting to always improve. You know, I don't know any of our craftsmen at Silverlining. When you ask them, even Alex, when you say that's a great drawing, he'll turn around and say I could have improved it. You know, and I think it's that.
Why even Alex?
Sorry?
Because he's already that good, you mean?
Well, I say designer rather than craftsman, but it's that inner design. It's almost.
We should get onto that.
You know, clients have said to me, "Really, you guys should be in nursing." You know, and
because you care so much.
Yeah, because we're not really interested in the sort of commercial side of it, and it's like we just want to do a better job.
I bet you get paid more than
Probably, but
I'm guessing.
But I think, you know, we mentioned technology. We do use technology, and I think that's just another tool. If you look at like the Stone Age, we invented tools made from flint, and Bronze Age, Iron Age. It's just that we have the ability and the knowledge now, and I think modern craftsmanship should involve technology. And it's like if you get a CNC machine. You need a very clever person to get the best out of it. If you just use it as a tool, you'll get very ordinary products. But really, you need a craftsman to get the best out of that. All pieces of an automated hand tool, basically. But the one interesting thing that I found is that it can't think for itself. I know we have robots and things like that, but a craftsman can adapt at any time when he's making something. And they use all their senses. You know, you can tell if a veneer is thin by tapping it. You can tell if the tool's not sharp by listening. And I think it's that adaptability that a craftsperson has that enables you to be ordinary. And you're always looking for that new thing.
That's about the direct relationship of all the senses between the work and the creator, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, where you say you can tell whether a tool is sharp just by the way it sounds.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting people have used the word craft and craftsmanship. I think
we need to fix that.
Yeah.
We need to fix that.
You know, craft, people think of wolves spinning in the middle of Wales, you know, and like, how disciplined is that? Someone working on their own, or someone doing some wood turning in their spare time? I think craftsmanship is your whole life pursuit of that. In other words, your work and home life really, it blurs into one. I mean, even Raf, that's here in the audience, he thinks about his work 24/7. And he's got 2 kids and a family. It's like, I don't know what is the difference between his work and his home life. It's very difficult to tell.
I think you can find that in most creative people, I think. You can find that and kind of live their work sort of thing.
Yeah, but in many professions, I mean, that's the point of Sen's book in many respects, when he talks about the doctors, they worked the whole time. You know, so you see it in a craft's way of thinking across the board, which I think is the interesting thing about Sen's book, and interesting about the perception of craftsmanship.
But like, you hear the word craft bakeries. Is that craftsmanship, or is it just a marketing term? You know, or handcrafted pies. You know, is that just someone's used that word to make someone buy it, or is it craftsmanship? I don't know.
Well, it is being used. I think the word has been picked up by many brands. I mean, my favourite advert of last Christmas was Coca-Cola, who picked up on this notion of provenance. And in their ad campaign last Christmas, they showed the people that worked in their factory in Warrington, in an effort, I guess, to show this is where Coca-Cola is made. It's made in Warrington. These are the people that make the drink. And actually, we know it's the biggest brand in the world. So I think there's no doubt that it's being used and subverted.
I wanted to just make a small remark here. I came from France 11 years ago and started working in London, and I have noticed very early on that there is a big debate between craft and craftsmanship. And for me, it's exactly the same. And I am for the emancipation of craft and craftsmanship. And actually the elevation of craftsmanship to the level that design the last 5 years, or design art the 5 years has taken like a big place on the even the art scene a little bit. It's, you know, for a craftsman is someone who, as you said, you know, being a doctor, you don't stop working, being an architect or a designer. You're always thinking because you're passionate about your work. But for a craftsman, he cannot think only. He has to make, and he has to put the thinking into, yes, you know, the obviously either you try and you try again until you master the shape that you want to create, or you have someone coming to you and telling you how to do it. And this is what's interesting about, you know, craftsmanship, is that there is this, you can be a designer without being able to make something. And actually the best designers are the designers who don't make anything.
You think?
Yes, yes.
You don't think that the best designers are the ones who understand how things are made?
Of course you can understand, but understanding is one thing, making it is something else. Performing it is something completely different.
Yeah.
And this is the difference between craftsmanship and craft, and for me both of them are the same. And being a designer, you have basically the concept versus the making, and you have this big push of designers makers, which we had the last 5 years. And designers were taking the space of the craftsman, but I think it should be also the other way around. Craftsmen can very well be the thinkers also behind an object, as well as spending their time to master the shape that they are trying to perform. They should also take the credit of being able to create shapes. And I'd like to open the debate on that. And
I just say that I actually sort of disagree with you, because I think that in my world, craftsmen and designers, I use the word as one.
Yes.
I say craftsman designer. I think the only thing wrong with craft at the moment is the word. And I would like to have...
What's wrong with the word?
I think it's a terrible word. And it's very interesting that Collect don't use the word craft in their show. They call it, what is it? The exhibition.
Over there, what's them?
Well, no, you would know. What is it?
You're the
Collective object.
Defend the word craft.
They use the word object. The Craft Museum in America changed its name to Museum of Art and Design. They show pretty much the same work.
Well, MAD, for
MAD,
sure.
okay. Well, it's a catchy title and people remember it. I think craft has become sort of redundant as a word. And I think that it is actually obscuring the wonderful work that is going on, because I think that now, to me, when I show work, when I look for work, the work combines art, design and craft. To me, it's one thing. It's made by hand. It doesn't make any difference to me if it's made by someone that calls himself a designer or whether they call themselves a craftsman. It is this combination. When I mentioned the Alexander McQueen, to me it's, all elements.
With respect, I'm going to have to disagree with you.
Fine.
Not just a little bit.
Fine.
Because I was a craftsman and I was by no means a designer. I couldn't even draw.
Well, then you probably would never have been in one of my exhibitions.
that you show, actually, you have fantastic shows actually that I always come and look at them, and they are fantastically well curated, and you have a young generation of designers who are making things with their own hands. But if you look at it from the classic background, I am 45, but I still consider myself coming from a classic background. I have worked in a profession where my peers, as soon as I walked into the atelier in École des Beaux-Arts, they told me first of all to undress and to sing a song, and then they started teaching me architecture. And how? By going out and buying the little pins that you pin at the tracing paper on the board. This is the start of it. This is how you start learning your job. And then, after 10 years of going step by step, you can transmit the knowledge that you had into the other younger one who will also you ask to undress and go and buy the pins for you to do your work, and also you make some jokes about whether the pins have to have a round head or a flat head. And the idea of craft in France, for example, is something that is century old. And in France, you have the atelier where there is no debate between craftsmanship and craft. You have the metal worker, the blacksmiths, the carpenters, the stone makers, and they are all in the same direction. They all go towards the same direction, and they all know that it takes at least 10 years to become someone who can call himself a master craftsman. There is this Tour de France where you go from one village to another, and it's like a confraternity where the young apprentice goes from one atelier to another for 10 years. And after 10 years, he comes back to the place where he started his journey, and he will perform his masterpiece, and he will become a master craftsman. And then his duty is to go out and teach other people his knowledge. And this, for me, this is the best and the most noble profession, because you don't have other professions that are creative and teach you how to innovate in a completely non-conformist way and in a completely open way, which will never stop. And I'm talking about this type of people, not a person who just discovered how to put his ceramic into an oven and get it out, and if it's splashed down, we will call it art. It is a question of really mastering the shape, and on top of this, you put the layer of poetry that you want to deliver. And these are the two layers that I think we should look at, whether the designer puts the layer of poetry and the purpose of the object, or the craftsman does it. And there is no problem for a craftsman also to do it today. And this is the openness that we have today in the 21st century. Especially with the arrival of new tools, of 3D printing and other CNC machine. If I want to ask myself if this piece has had any CNC machining in it, I would already think that this piece has failed its job of being a master craft piece. The CNC machine.
So you don't accept digital input into craftsmanship?
I do accept, but it's just like there is a big difference between, we used to use these pens called rotring, to do our drawings. Today you have the same type of pin for a pen in a printing machine. Printing or drawing by hand drawing by hand becomes a skill. Printing is just the result of the thinking that you had on the computer. This is where the cutoff is. Then comes in the other layers of being able to do something special with your hands or using the machine to do it. So this is, I think, one point of the debate. Are we talking about craftsmanship, about the performance of the hand or not? I think it should group everything. A CNC machine or 3D printing, they are just like the pen. They are just a tool. But the mastering of the machine, knowing how to even try to change the software to make the shape that you want to make and deliver it to the machine, is a knowledge, is also craft. So I think that today in the 21st century, there is the knowledge that is one thing, but then you have a layer of the purpose.
It's a position. I think we'll find variations with acceptance of that. What we're trying to do is trying to work out what the craftsperson should think that he or she is doing. So the question, because clearly we've got three legs here to this debate. We've got art, design, craft. So if we're looking for meaning, we know that a highly crafted piece of furniture has in and of itself some kind of value that you don't get. You don't respond immediately to a machine-made thing in the same way. So there's something about the handmade input that is very particular. You take two identical things, one's made by machine, one's made by hand, you can pretty much tell the difference. There's a vibe, if you like, something coming off it. So the question is, do then people that think of themselves as craftspeople, because how else are we going to define it if we accept that the debate is somehow compromised? If you think of yourself as a craftsperson, do you try and put meaning into your work in the sense of, say, this is a comment on the life as it is today, or do you leave that to the artists Designers, on the other hand, I mean, I personally think that the very best designers are the ones that understand the making process and understand the craft process. They don't necessarily have to engage, with their own hands about it. But again, for me, the design art debate, I want to bring Henrietta in on this. The design art debate is another one. It's a good old chestnut. Should design have meaning? If it has meaning, then it's trying to be art. Should it try to be art? So I suppose what we're trying to do is identify whether we're prescribing, should craft do this, should design do that, should art do the other thing. If we respond, as Janice says, just purely personally, then, and as Grant, I suppose, is saying, then that's fine, that's okay. But then there's another part of our process of responding to these things, the intellectual part, which is saying, well, that's craft, that's design, that's art, and does it help to separate them? It must somehow help to separate them. Grant says no.
Isn't it circumstantial, though? I mean, isn't it circumstantial? It depends on the brief that you take. If you're taking a brief where something is intended to be artistic and a piece of art, then that's very different to something that has a function, and therefore you approach it in a different way. So, as a designer, you might say to the cabinet maker or something, no, this is exactly how I want it because it has to follow this function.
Yes.
Or you might say, actually, I want you to bring all of your skills and your abilities to give it some extra life, and that's
a different part of the brief.
A totally different part of the brief.
Which goes to then takes us to that question about whether an artist should work to a brief or not, because an artist, usually, not always, but usually, certainly in the modern world, works from within his or her own idea. They want to express something, that's what they do, whereas the designer is, quote, solving a problem, unquote, because that's, one of the kind of standard definitions of design. And the craftsperson is just, again, at a very low and arguable level, let's call it, is just doing that thing, just making it.
But does that differentiate between perhaps an artist, where very often an artist is doing work to their own brief, because then they have an exhibition, and the sale comes afterwards, whereas very often with craftsmanship, you're working to a brief because it's a piece that's being commissioned for a specific location or function.
Its function. I mean, as Hanno's comment here, this is actually really quite good that we're debating stuff, and we've even got things that are already stuck on the wall. What Hanno says, again, one of Mark's senior craftsmen, of course there is an element of art in the creation process, but at the end of the day we're making a functional object that is meant to be experienced. The end product is so much more than an idea or a sketch. Henrietta, I want you to start talking about this, because as an outsider to Silverlining, you know Silverlining, as a critic and commentator, you probably know Silverlining better than any of us, apart from, Mark, obviously, and people that work there. So what are you seeing in this company that throws any light on this debate, which is essentially, I think, what we're talking about, is a relationship between art, craft, design. How's it working?
Well, I think just so far as well in the discussion, it's got a little bit bogged down with perhaps definitions, and I think that can be quite dangerous, where we're trying to define what craftsmanship is, what design is, what art is, how they all fit together. And I think that's what I found kind of surprising and inspiring when I started talking to Silverlining, and it doesn't really necessarily try to define those things, and it's really all of the different elements where you have the designer and maker and the whole group actually working together without necessarily questioning which one does what. They're really all pitching in, and that's what I thought was quite exciting and interesting. And I think with the design art side of things as well, that's become subject of so much debate. What is design, what is art, what are they when they're two together? And I think that can be very limiting. Whereas actually, if you just get on with it and do it, then all kinds of things can happen.
Okay, and is that your position, Grant, as editor of Crafts magazine?
Yes, I mean, to be honest, these kind of I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is there's a spectrum. There is fine art. There's fine art that uses craft. There's craft which has art in it. There's craft. There's craftsmanship. It goes across the spectrum. And I think the trouble with defining things is it seems to me that the practitioners often aren't that bothered. It's the journalists, it's the critics, it's the curators, it's the auctioneers, it's everybody
all
else.
These people.
In other words.
And that person.
I tend to feel that I mean, certainly for the crafts world, I think up until fairly recently there has been a habit to turn in on itself and navel gaze as to the meaning of craft or whether something is craft if we're using this tool you're a craftsman. And I just kind of think it's kind of not a particularly positive position to take up. You know, people are creative. Let's not worry too much about definitions. That's my point of view, Aidan.
It's a good one. Mark, what's happening inside Silverlining? What are the movements there? You know, we're here basically because Silverlining is making a move.
They've got a variety of skills, which some are totally opposite others within the company, but we come together and try and produce things that are truly extraordinary. But the one key thing is that we have passion and we have innovation, and it doesn't matter what we're doing, we're always trying to look for the next thing. I mean, the two items we have here, you know, we will move those on as objects. And it's about always trying to look for something new, improving on that. And whether you define that in quality, the way it's made, how it's made. And I think it's about allowing, it's like an umbrella group. It allows people to, you know, grow themselves. Because if it just becomes a job, then you're not going to get extraordinary things coming out of it. So it's allowing people under our sort of organisation to really develop and find their own, you know, I guess, way of working and how they can take things forward. So like a modern day guild.
I'd like to bring in the idea of luxury and ask us those questions about whether highly crafted, you know, in today's digital age you can produce anything, usually in China for not very much money. Does craft have to remain the exclusive provenance, the exclusive domain of the rich? Is it just a luxury? Are you making just luxury products?
I think I think luxury will have to come back to craftsmanship after the boom in India and China. They'll have to go back to the inherent values that luxury houses had. You can't sell luxury based on seasons, in my opinion. In other words, a luxury item should be durable, it should have value, it should last. I mean, if you bought a Hermes bag after the war, you'd hand it down to your granddaughter. And this idea.
Can I just, well, since you mentioned Hermes, actually that's really interesting because it is the ultimate luxury brand, but they take such infinite care in researching, and they did a whole range, not just a range, that's demeaning it, from India, where they sent over their designers who travelled around the country, going to rural communities to really research the skills in these rural communities, which had the effect of giving work to people whose skills are just disappearing, whether they're beaders or weavers or dyers or whatever. They went all around the country. They did it with meticulous care, and they produced this amazing, beautiful range of work, leather goods, silk goods, all the rest of it, which then filters down. It starts off as a luxury brand, but actually it seeps down into the market for people who, you know, can't afford these things. But I think that is, and they're not the only people who do it, but they are dedicated to doing it. They've been doing it forever. You know, their leather work. It is true craftsmanship. It's true luxury, but it also gives work to people. It makes sure that crafts and skills continue that should be dying, are dying, and I think that they really deserve to be applauded.
So you could say it's a luxury brand's sense of its own responsibility, really.
Yeah, but there are several of them. I think people don't, you know, they hear the word luxury brand and they cringe, but actually luxury, we should be pretty grateful in the world we're in for these luxury brands, because they are keeping things going and they are keeping industries going. For example, a totally different thing, but the University of Hereford introduced a blacksmithing course about 4 years ago, and I happened to go to Young Designers and I met someone who was the first graduate, and I introduced him to somebody. This young man has been getting commissions all over the world. He makes the most incredible, he's a blacksmith, designer, artist, craftsman. He makes everything from gates to pergolas to God knows what. And I think it's incredible because it's everything.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. One of the things which I find frustrating when you mention about the government support of these skills or craftsmanship.
No, there is a contradiction in that, which I never got on.
But there's no known qualification for a craftsman, because we're always learning. You can't go and get a PhD in craftsmanship, you can't get a degree in craftsmanship, and yet you can go to umpteen universities and get a B in product design. So I think recently, craftsmanship, people have tried to elevate it by jumping on the back of luxury, or even the word art furniture. You know, is it that to make furniture respectable? Is it to make it sound more expensive? Is it to sound more extraordinary object? Because I think that with the word craft, there is a sort of I mean, for instance, when people knew I was going to do what I did, they would literally lower their voice. So you're a furniture maker. It's like, well, have you only got one O level? You know, there's almost association with it, that it was a secondary thing if you did things with your hands. And yet I think that is where we need to do work, is elevating these people with incredible skills, people be a coppersmith, a blacksmith, people that do savoir skills, and elevating them to a different level so they get the respect they deserve, because they're certainly not doing it for commercial gain.
Well, the blacksmithing course they are, and part of the course actually is teaching them business skills. So it combines everything. But the work is craftsmanship, but they actually know what they're doing in terms of running a business too.
It's sort of, the craftsmanship thing sort of suggests beavering away and not really caring how much you're not earning, doesn't it? You know?
Well, they care how much they're earning, and this guy is earning enough to keep himself going properly.
Grant, you had a point that was saying...
Well, no, there is a contradiction, although, I mean, going back to my initial, that despite the fact the government is talking up the crafts, I mean, they aren't backing it in schools or universities, workshops are closing down all over the country. And yeah, there is a distinct danger that we will have a skill shortage if we're not very careful. So there is a contradiction in government policy.
But again, when they use the word apprenticeship scheme, they start talking about electricians and plumbers, which, you know, a plumber that can do proper, you know, copper work is a skill in itself. And you can't get them. You know, all they can do now is push plastic together. So we need to do something about these inherent skills, or they really will disappear.
Here's a question for you as founder of Silverlining. Correct if I'm wrong, I don't think I am, your main area of work so far has been in the luxury market, is that right?
Correct.
So can you have the level of craftsmanship that you pride yourselves on, that you obviously generate in your collaborative particular atmosphere, can you have that at a more mass market price? Or is it so expensive that it has to be very, very...
I think it's difficult. I mean, we've talked about this internally. Could we have a trickle-down effect of all the innovation we've learned and do it on lower price product? And that would be possible, but ultimately, one of the reasons why, if you're saying our work is luxury, the reason why people are buying it is because it's extraordinary and it's rare.
Yeah.
And as soon as you mass produce it or do it at a much bigger level, they're losing that.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a gentleman walk in here today, he said, I've never heard of you, how long have you been going? A year? And we said, no, 27 years. He said, why haven't I heard from you? You know, you're a luxury product, why haven't I heard of your company? I said, well, it's all because it's through word of mouth. And, you know, the guy really liked that because he obviously is a very low-key guy, and that's the way he works. And that's the way we work. And if we were mass-producing things, then I think it loses some of the mystique. And also, we wouldn't have any staff left, because our guys don't want to repeat things. They want to push the next thing.
I don't think I was talking about mass production. I think I was just talking about lower-priced products that ideally make craft or craftsmanship available to a wider audience.
You can do that. In fact, IKEA do that. The Hella Jongerius, who's the Dutch designer, makes one-off museum pieces and commissions. She also makes a range for IKEA. Actually, you can hardly tell the difference between. She makes pots that look like they're embroidered, hand embroidered, and her range for IKEA is quite amazing.
She does it. Does she do it herself, or she?
No. It's mass-produced, limited produced, but also Target, the American company. I was just talking to somebody today. Target are now doing it with designers, so it's a way of making things that you can't afford possible. Obviously, you have to be, you know, you want it, you know about it. But I think that's great. I don't think there's any problem at all in doing that sort of limited production and making something rare and beautiful accessible to people. to keep it, you know.
I mean, one of the things our clients enjoy is we call it the journey, and that's them being involved from the start to the end. And you know, that's something that we've found that is a really big part of Silverlining moving forward.
That's what commissioning is all about.
Exactly. And you know, some clients still just think that it's not available in the world these days. They still can't believe these things are going on.
But I also think that a lot of the value is actually coming from the time that goes into making this object, and that in many cases what makes the object so expensive and therefore places it into the luxury market.
I know that, but it's also very nice that in some occasions people that, you know, can't be in the luxury market but still have a great eye and want something very beautiful can actually buy something. It doesn't devalue the expensive object. But I think it's a very democratic way.
Isn't that exactly the problem that's facing people like Louis Vuitton and Hermes and all these?
Oh, that's different. That's rip-off.
But
that's different.
It's the same thing.
I don't think it's the same thing at all.
But all the differences that you're saying with these sort of woven things is that she's given.
No, they're not woven
here.
things. No, I'm sorry, it's not like that.
But if Hermes
She
gave
has
license
been-
to Debenhams to make a bag that was very similar but
Well,
cheaper, isn't it the same?
for example, no, I don't agree. For example, with Hella, she's actually a ceramicist, really. That's what I would call her. And her work, a lot of her work, not all of it, is she sort of embroiders through the pot. And she is completely in control of these pieces. So they're her pieces.
She goes to the atelier and check how they are doing that.
Absolutely. And she did a big project in India. She is totally in control of it. And, you know, Hermes have worked with people, giving them remnants of their material to make products. Actually, the person I know that did that is also doing something with Chanel. I mean, there are ways of doing it, and it's very controlled, but I don't think one devalues the other.
Yeah, no, but also the fashion example that you used before, and I entirely agree with you. I think a lot of fashion brands got it exactly right. They have an opportunity to create this fantastic haute couture pieces with all the skill and the time that goes into it, and then also have the trickle down effect and be able to produce a different range.
Which I think it's really unfair to just make luxury available to people that can afford it. I think that we should all have the opportunity to get the pleasure. And I think that when Hella does something with these other people, I really, really admire it. And I have got an IKEA pot of Hella's, and I've also got an expensive pot, which gives me more pleasure. They don't give me pleasure.
You're a luxury socialist. I think this is
This
is the way forward. We can all have a bit.
Can I spice up the debate? I would like to spice up the debate. I think we are mixing everything. Luxury is one thing, craftsmanship is something else, and design is a third thing. And we're trying to combine everything in one thing, and I don't think it's good. For example, let's go back to the example of Tor Bunge and Mallet, the project that Mallet did, where they had this new brand which only survived a year and a half, which was called Meta. And their idea was to sell contemporary design with the traditional craftsmanship. And they have done beautifully. Who took the credit? Not even Meta, not even the brand, because it didn't survive, not even Mallet, but the designers. And they really forgot the fantastic skilled craftsmen all over. Actually, they went to France for all of their project. All over France, who did these fantastic pieces. They were basically responding in a very enthusiastic way, because you have passion behind the making of an object, and they didn't have any credit. I think today it's time for craftsmanship to be emancipated, to be elevated, and we can call it the art of making. Craftsmanship is the art of making. So do we want to know the artist, or we don't want to know the artist? And I think we should towards knowing the artist. Anyone coming with a great idea, making a swish on a piece of paper and saying, this is a design, can you make it? It's massive skill to be able to make a swish, stand on the floor and do something, which is a function. And this is one thing. Luxury is plenty of other things. I made 2 debates about luxury, and luxury is basically today only based on branding and aspiration. There is nothing else today in luxury other than aspiring to own aspiring to have. And all the brands play on that also. All the Louis Vuitton and other brands and Hermes, they play on the fact that it is basically luxury, as we are looking at it today, is market. And this is the true luxury that we're looking at here. Luxury should not be mass market. Luxury should be really for so
if luxury is mass market, it wouldn't be luxury.
No, it wouldn't be luxury. Yes, what do you mean?
I don't think that suddenly luxury is aspirational. I think that luxury, if you go back to the 20s or way before, luxury has always been something that people aspire to.
Yes.
So I think it's
Even now,
so why do you want
this brand? Yeah, but back then, only a few people knew about these famous brands.
Because
now everyone.
well, we know so much about everything. So
and this is what Mark and I have been to China a few times now, and what is interesting, we're trying to bring Silverlining on this project, is that very often the Chinese say, "Oh, we want this and this French orphan brand." We're trying to say that Silverlining is above that. From Hermes, you buy a product from Hermes. In that sense, it's art, you can say. While Silverlining is actually above that. It's unique for you, It's the ultimate.
Now we are in the process of building a brand in a way that it becomes known by the masses. If you are in the direction of building a brand which will be open to the masses, then you can make key holders, with key rings, with silver lining on it and whatever design it is, and it to the masses. Today there is also a big behavior with luxury, with buying luxury. You have the young people who are maybe not dumb enough to be only aspirational for luxury, who wants really to acquire luxury. They will wait. They will wait to have enough to buy the right piece for their home or for their wardrobe. It is today a different behavior that we are looking at. We are looking at exactly what Silverlining is doing. We are looking for the real knowledge and the provenance, as Javier said. It is, you want to own a piece and you want to know about the story that is behind the piece. Today we are living and accumulating layers. We're not just going for a brand or just a ready-made product which you can find everywhere and that your neighbors will have tens of. You want to have your unique piece, and even if you have to wait for it, you will wait for it and get it at whatever price you can afford. And if you cannot afford, you will wait until you have the right money to buy it. The consumers, since already 10 years, I have noticed this. I used to sell furniture. I'm an architect. I used to sell furniture because people who wanted to buy furniture. 10 years ago, they came to me and told me, can we tweak this sofa this way? Can we change this armchair that way? And then I found out immediately that what they wanted is a unique piece. This was already existing since 10 years and 15 years. So people want the uniqueness. And what is, for example, a new technology offering today is the possibility of mass customization. Again, the word mass is coming back. And what is Silverlining is in the group of people are doing is the uniqueness and really putting back into the real luxury, the real behavior of owning something that you wait for in a way you deserve. They are putting back these, the workmanship and the knowledge and the craft, like other also manufacturers and other people who also, you can find also examples between designers and makers. And this is interesting. This is a really interesting overture towards what is going to be the next 10 years of collecting, of commissioning, and of looking at furniture and objects in a way which has disappeared for the last generation, 30 years of bombarding people with brands and calling them luxury.
Brands muddy the water, is what you're saying, is it?
Well, in fact, the day that you open up to a mass market, you will either with companies and craftsmen like Silverlining, you will lose a little bit of your soul. So it's a choice. It's either you talk about mass market and you want to make headlines in papers and magazines, or you continue doing what you're best at doing and wait for the people to discover you. And this is what's beautiful today. And this is what's the real trend today. You want hotels that are in places that you cannot even find on a map. You want hotel rooms that look different than like the standard that you find everywhere. You want destinations that are different. You want also the artist that is not famous but who has a real skill and real creative soul. And then you give this knowledge is circulating within the circles of people who are within this movement of collecting the exclusive and not collecting the luxurious. It is the exclusive that makes the difference today.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true for many, many people, but I also think it's not true for many, many people as well who want to belong, basically. They want to belong to a club that says, I'm a member of the Nike Club or the Hermes Club or the Sunseeker Club, whatever kind of brand it happens to be. But I'm inclined to think that if debate there is in our attempts to kind of try and nail, what craft means today and what it should continue to mean, I'm inclined to think that brands kind of get in the way a little bit, really, because it's probable that they're supplying some sort of emotional value to people that you would normally get, or ideally you would get, from something that is very well crafted. But we all know that craft and mass production, don't go together. So the many, many people out there who want some sense of belonging by being given a sense of luxury club is maybe the Debenhams version of the Hermes bag does have that function. But I think probably people in this room would turn up their nose, wouldn't they?
People just see the value in the brand name, I think, rather than the product from that brand.
Yeah, that's also
So the thing about a craft, we said a crafted item, it's got all that time, investment, passion, love invested into it, and that's where people see the value in the crafted item.
Yeah.
Whereas this idea, or the concept of luxury, is associated a lot with big brands and their names rather than the product they produce.
And also people. I mean, there's a lovely anecdote. It was on the when they did Mark Newson's documentary a couple of years ago. Alan Yentov did that documentary on him, where they turned to a Newson collector who's a hedge funder who had loads of Newson's work, and they turned to him and said, "So what is it about Mark's work that you like?" And he kind of looked at his office with all Newson's stuff. And thought, oh God, it just makes me feel horny. And so that, so discernment is a different thing.
You know what? I think that's a really good spot to stop on. Craft makes you feel horny.